Have you ever had one of those mornings where you wake up after 8 hours of sleep, but you still feel like you're moving through waist-deep water? Your joints are stiff, your brain feels like it's wrapped in cotton wool, and despite your best efforts at the gym, the scale just won't budge. We often dismiss these things as just getting older or having a busy week. But what if there's a deeper, invisible thread connecting all of them?
It's a fascinating and honestly slightly unnerving realization when you look at the data. What you're describing isn't just a lack of willpower or a need for more caffeine. It's often the outward manifestation of a biological silent fire happening under the surface. We're talking about chronic, low-grade inflammation. It's not the kind of inflammation you see when you stub your toe and it turns red and swells up. That's actually a good thing. That's your body's repair crew arriving on the scene. The real villain in the modern health story is the inflammation that never turns off. It's like a car alarm that stays triggered for 3 weeks straight eventually. The battery just dies.
That's a powerful image. The car alarm that won't stop. But why is our alarm system so haywire lately? If inflammation is supposed to be a survival mechanism, why does it seem to be working against us in the 21st century?
Because our biology is essentially running ancient software in a hyper-modern environment. Evolutionarily, inflammation was a short-term, high-intensity burst to kill a pathogen or fix a wound. Once the job was done, the system reset. But today, we're bombarded by microstressors that the body interprets as threats. Think about ultra-processed foods, constant blue light from screens, chronic work stress, and environmental toxins. The immune system doesn't see a deadlines at work or lack of sleep. It sees a physiological emergency. So, it stays in this state of persistent alertness. It's trying to protect you, but because it never gets the signal to stand down, it starts damaging the very tissues it's meant to defend.
So when we feel that brain fog or that deep, heavy exhaustion, is that actually our brain responding to these immune signals? It feels less like a physical injury and more like a total system slowdown.
Exactly. And that's a key insight from recent neurobiology. When your body is in an inflammatory state, your brain actually makes a strategic decision to conserve energy. It's called sickness behavior. Your brain thinks you're fighting an infection, so it dials down your motivation, makes you feel socially withdrawn, and slows your cognitive processing. It's essentially forcing you to rest, even if there's no flu virus in sight. This is why people with chronic inflammation often feel emotionally drained or unmotivated. It's not a character flaw, it's a metabolic defense strategy.
That really changes the perspective on laziness. But what about the physical side? Specifically weight gain. We've always been told it's just calories in versus calories out. But you're suggesting inflammation creates a much more complex, vicious cycle.
The calories in, calories out model is way too simplistic because it ignores the hormonal environment. Here's the kicker. Fat tissue, especially visceral fat around the midsection, isn't just a storage tank for energy. It's actually an active endocrine organ that pumps out inflammatory signals. So, inflammation causes metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance, which makes it easier to gain weight. Then, that new fat tissue produces more inflammation. It's a closed loop. You can't just diet your way out of that if the underlying inflammatory fire is still raging. You have to address the biological signaling first.
It sounds like a check engine light that we've been ignoring for years. But if standard medical tests often come back normal for people feeling this way, how are we supposed to actually see the fire before the whole house burns down?
That's where the shift toward health intelligence becomes a game changer. We're moving away from reactive medicine where we wait for a disease to show up on a blood test and toward proactive monitoring. This is why things like heart rate variability, or HRV, are becoming so central. HRV is essentially a window into your autonomic nervous system. When you're under chronic inflammatory or physiological stress, your HRV trends downward. It's a whisper from your body saying, "I'm not recovering." By the time you have a diagnosed condition, the body has been shouting for a decade. Wearable intelligence, like what we see with OXYZEN, allows us to hear those whispers in real time.
So it's about looking at the trends rather than a single snapshot. If someone realizes they're in this loop, they're tired, foggy, and inflamed, what's the first step to actually lowering that biological burden? It feels overwhelming to change everything at once.
It's not about attacking the body with a more aggressive workout or a stricter diet. In fact, sometimes that makes it worse because you're adding more stress to an already stressed system. The goal is to reduce the biological load. Start with the basics: circadian rhythm alignment, getting sunlight in the morning, and avoiding screens at night to fix your sleep-wake cycle. Focus on whole, anti-inflammatory foods. But perhaps most importantly, focus on recovery. We live in a culture that fetishizes the grind, but your immune system requires periods of safety and stillness to turn off the inflammatory response.
It's almost a philosophical shift, isn't it? We've spent so long trying to optimize our performance by pushing harder, but you're saying the real optimization comes from understanding our internal limits and respecting the recovery process.
Precisely. We have to stop treating our bodies like machines that just need more fuel and start treating them like complex, interconnected ecosystems. If the soil is toxic, the plant won't grow, no matter how much water you give it. We need to clean up the internal environment. When you lower the inflammatory burden, the symptoms, the fatigue, the weight gain, the brain fog often start to resolve themselves because the body finally feels safe enough to function normally.
It's a powerful reminder that our bodies are always talking to us. We just have to learn the language. As we wrap up, I'm thinking about the future of this. We aren't just tracking steps anymore. We're tracking the very essence of our resilience. If you could leave our listeners with one thought on where health is headed, what would it be?
I think the future belongs to the informed individual. We are entering an era where you don't have to guess why you feel the way you do. With the right data and the right interpretation, we can catch the imbalance before it becomes exhaustion. The goal of OXYZEN and this whole movement isn't just to live longer, it's to live with more clarity and more energy. We have to remember, fatigue isn't always laziness, and weight gain isn't always a lack of discipline. Often, it's just a body that is quietly struggling. The question is, are you listening to the signal, or are you just drowning out the noise?
A perfect place to end. The silent signal is there. The question is whether we have the tools and the patience to respond to it. Thanks for taking us through the science of what's really going on beneath the surface. It's been an eye-opener.
My pleasure. Let's keep listening to those whispers. This is OXYZEN Health Intelligence.